Murphy Austin Adams Schoenfeld LLP, focusing on business law and commercial litigation, is proud to support Rob on the Road Region Rising. More information available at murphyaustin.com.
And now, Rob on the Road, exploring Northern California.
California wildfires are incredibly concerning, and we are seeing them grow in intensity, in length, in size. In all areas, they are increasing. In 2021, California lost the size of the state of Delaware in wildfire. The California Fire Safe Council's goal is to try to help prevent fires, particularly wildfires, by bringing on board fire safe councils all across the state to help prevent wildfires. Hedi Jalon is the executive director of the California Fire Safe Council, and she joins us now on Rob at Home. Great to see you, Hedi. Thank you.
Great to see you, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Thrilled to have you here. And I want to start off with, you see this from a statewide lens. What are your biggest concerns right now when it comes to the growing wildfire season, which has really grown out of a season to a year-long concern? And even in the mitigation efforts, it's still year-round. But what is your biggest concern right now, Hedi?
The big concern is, the pace and the scale at which these wildfires burn. It's been an ever-evolving situation here in California, across the West, where we no longer have a fire season. You go back to 2012 even, you could still then somewhat consider that you maybe had a fire season. So think of how rapidly that's changed. That's due to several factors. These wildfires are certainly fueled, the intensity and the ferocity are certainly fueled by climate change that are creating dry and hot conditions. So, we're battling climate change, we're battling the rapid pace and growth and scale of these wildfires. And until recently, we didn't have the resources that we are now just starting to see be put towards wildfire prevention and mitigation.
Resources like what?
Resources like funding and the capacity to move the funding and execute the projects that these funds are for. And so right now we're at sort of a precipice where we are seeing the state, the budget with last year's budget and this year's proposed budget, close to $2 billion in wildfire prevention, mitigation funding. But that's merely a drop in the bucket for what we really need across the state, and it's just now coming to the forefront. So we're at a stage where we're just seeing the resources come through. Now we got to put it to work, and that takes time. It's not an instant cure. This is a very steady, consistent process that we'll see results from, but it has to be consistent, and we have to not lose sight of the problem. Keep our eye on the prize and keep going.
The funding you're talking about, Hedi, what will that help do when it comes to prevention, and how does your organization play a role in that?
Absolutely. So we're a statewide nonprofit, the California Fire Safe Council, and we provide grant funding and resources for grassroots organizations, wildfire mitigation groups, and local fire safe councils across the state. Our organization is over 2 decades old. We became a nonprofit in the early 90s. We've been providing grant funding to local fire safe councils and wildfire mitigation groups for several years, over $100 million in grant funding and over $2 million in capacity support and other resources towards mitigation efforts across the state. And so what we really do is try to couple our grant funding with support, guidance, and coaching to help our grantees be successful in implementing their projects. So we fund projects anywhere from education and outreach, evacuation planning, defensible space, fuel breaks, anything that is going to help with wildfire prevention and mitigation.
That's great. That's great. And you fund local chapters because the local chapters know what their area needs.
Exactly. So the California Fire Safe Council started with this concept of the local Fire Safe Council, which is a grassroots volunteer-based, or these are grassroots volunteer-based organizations. And their sole purpose is to provide wildfire mitigation and prevention efforts in their local community. And because our state is so geographically disparate, we have fire safe councils in the southern region that have different needs than fire safe councils in the Northern California region. Different topography, different geography. So really the projects must be implemented at the local level, but the attention and the direction must be provided at a larger level.
These are firefighting tools that are used prior to a horrific wildfire. Are you seeing results?
We are seeing results. When there is steady, consistent support and execution of these projects, we see results. When there's engagement from the community, from the county, from the state, down to the county, down to the local level, and attention around the issue, that helps. When there's education and outreach around the issue and encouragement of residents to take ownership and accountability for what they can do, then that works. We've seen some success stories that we can now start to talk about. We funded a group, a local resource conservation district down in SoCal a couple years ago, a $300,000 grant to help with create defensible space and reduce fuel load. And when they suffered from the Creek Fire, they reported back that they were able to save 5 homes from all the work that they did with that grant.
Wow.
And I mentioned the cost of the grant because that gives you a sense of the size and scope of these projects. These are not one and done and small projects. That's why it is so important that now the governor has put attention and resources towards wildfire prevention, because the level and scale of resources needed is very high.
You know, it's so interesting, Hedi. I was in a room filled with your organization and people from all over the state talking about this issue. And that was in the fall of 2021. And I heard several people say that this is the story that never gets told. This is the story that you don't see on the news, because if you don't see it, then it's working. And it's, you know, a lot of times good news stories or things like that are, for one reason or another, not shared at that level. And I'm curious to ask you, what is your response, to that?
It's true. I think the nature of preventative work in whatever forum or format is sort of the unsung hero, if you will. It's, it's also hard to attach impact to prevention work. That takes a lot of work. But in any field, prevention, we're kind of a responsive society by nature. And so I think it falls in line with our culture in general, that we're results, we're response oriented, and it really takes the commitment and the perseverance to say, no, we need to think about prevention in any aspect.
In every area of life.
Yeah, exactly. And so I do feel hopeful that there's now conversation around prevention, and that there's serious thought put behind the problem. Not saying that there wasn't previously, but this is now being looked at and treated as a multi-pronged problem versus putting, a considerable, I'd say a large percentage to response. Now we're on a little bit more of an even playing field.
Yeah. That's a very good point, because, and so is the point about being a responsive society, because that is so accurate. We tend to respond to everything that happens. And there you are and your organization on the other side, who's been saying, we've been sounding this alarm. What would you say as far as, do you think we're going to see this in our lifetimes? True fire prevention and a huge impact.
I think we can, but I also think that, the numbers that we see coming out of the budget sounds like a lot comparatively to years past, but it's still not enough. And I would say we really need the private support and the public support to come to the table. The funding that we receive is all restricted. There are a lot of restrictions in place. We have very little flexibility with the funding that we receive. And that creates hardship, because these programs and the projects that need to get done quickly and expeditiously. And so it's really going to take everyone, from private corporations, businesses, the public, all the way down to from the federal to the state, to the county, to the community, to the individual level. It's going to take all of us to really make a dent and make an impact. And if we do, I think that we can start to see some considerable positive progress in our lifetime.
That's encouraging, Hedi. You mentioned public and private, partnership. Basically, we need the private sector and citizens to come along and jump on. What is your message to them? Let's take this as an opportunity to say whatever you want to say to the private sector and then to the citizens of California.
I would say that the state government heard the wake-up call, and they listened and they answered. And now businesses, individuals, and the public also need to pick up the phone and answer that call as well. To give you some context, we surveyed close to 20, maybe a little bit more, applicants who were applying for an evacuation planning project that we're providing funding for. And those counties that applied, within the survey, we asked what other, if you could receive funding for projects that you did not for any project that you did not submit for here in this application, what would it be? How much would it cost? Those kind of questions. And the result totaled close to $1 billion, still an unmet need for evacuation planning projects for just close to 20 counties
My
in
goodness.
the state of California. That doesn't even include staffing or other support in that, other type of support like that. That was just direct costs.
Wow.
So that gives you some sense of the scale of what's needed to really keep us fire safe and moving towards a wildfire resistant California.
So when
I
you
would-
talk about the businesses and the citizens doing something, what when they answer that call, right? They pick up the phone and call. What should they be doing to help? Should they be calling their lawmakers? Should they be calling and saying, and encouraging businesses to jump on board with this as well?
It's a great question. A couple things that folks can do. They can support the California Fire Safe Council. They can come to our website, cafiresafecouncil.org.
Which is a nonprofit.
It is a nonprofit. Can make a donation. That funding will in turn go out to the local communities, to our local fire safe councils for wildfire mitigation and prevention efforts, and will help with capacity building and support for our organization and the groups that we fund. Folks can sign up for our newsletter, keep informed and educated. Again, cafiresafecouncil.org. Folks can sign up right from the homepage, following us on social, sharing our posts, getting engaged and involved in that respect will help. If you live in an area close to local fire safe council, get involved. You can go to our website. Anybody can go to our website, again, cafiresafecouncil.org, and look up their, put in their address in our interactive map and find their nearest local fire safe council and see how they can get involved. They always need volunteers. They always need help. And so that's one way to help get involved. And I would also say your question about calling your lawmaker, if there are bills or legislation at the ballot box, be mindful of bills or legislation that will assist in the wildfire problem.
In a world where there's so much that you cannot control, prevention not only works in a lot of ways, but it puts you in a driver's seat of doing something and not just waiting. There's an emotional aspect of being involved in prevention as well.
You bring up emotional aspect, and you hit on something that is also important. The impact of wildfires is beyond the physical impact. We're now seeing data showing that the smoke and the effects from the smoke and the lingering smoke is toxic, deadly. In addition to that, you have the traumatic experience from folks who were evacuated, experienced wildfire. In that post-fire recovery process, there is a huge amount of trauma that these folks face. And that's something to think about as well. And that's something that we're mindful of as well.
We talk about defensible space. I have a question. Is it 30 feet or is it 100 feet? Or does it matter? Or is it different to where you live?
The resources can be found on our website for defensible space, home hardening. But there are 3 levels for creating defensible space. And if you're there's the 0-foot range, 5-foot range, and then you have a 100-foot range. And the resources on our website, cafiresafecouncil.org, are great depictions of how you can create defensible space at your home, and they're consistently updated as well, and adhere to CAL FIRE's standards as well as the new Safer from Wildfire framework.
Yeah, I watched a lot of those videos, and it's a 7-Saturday preparation. In 7 weeks and 7 Saturdays, you can do everything you need as much as possible, right? That you need for your home or your business, and that's a great tool.
Yes, absolutely. And homeowners can take additional steps to help with wildfire prevention year round, whether it's being mindful around the 4th of July, barbecue season, keeping those general safety tips in mind, making sure you don't have or procure illegal fireworks, making sure your grill is at a safe distance from your home. So really just always having an active and mindful attention around wildfire mitigation and prevention year round will help. And if you live in the city, you're an urban dweller and you never go to Tahoe, or you never go into any kind of WUI type based environment, share our information with folks, friends and loved ones who do live in those areas, and spread the word.
And what we've seen is, even in urban areas, we all have to take this as serious as someone who lives right in the most dangerous path, because it will take a unified effort to prevent these catastrophes. And I want to ask you, when they happen, when the wildfires happen, and you and your entire staff and team across the state have been working tirelessly on prevention, and of course the wildfires come, what do you do to stay motivated, and what do you do with your team? How do you all stay prevention focused when you see it everywhere you turn?
It's a great question, and we've had those conversations internally, because it can feel defeating at times, especially if our own fire safe councils are impacted or evacuated.
Good point.
But what we do know is that the mitigation efforts and the strategies that we deploy work. And they work when they're done at a consistently funded and steady pace, and at a pace that's on par with the pace in which we experience wildfires. So what I always try to think about is, if this can be a learning experience and a teaching moment, let's share with the community, with more communities and more folks that aren't aware of the problem, and get them involved. Because the more attention we have, again, going back to, this isn't just a state issue, this isn't just a federal government or state government led resolve. It's going to take everybody. If we get those folks on board and everybody's on board, these catastrophes could be a thing of the past. We know it. We've seen it work. We just have to keep at it and keep steady and growing and continuing the good fight.
Hedi, I appreciate your time. I know that this is a massive topic, and we probably barely have scratched the surface, but I did want to take the time to help get that message out there, that prevention works, and it takes a lot of prevention all across the board, united and consistent, to make it work. And that's what your organization is trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. And I thank you agreed we could talk for hours. And I'll say this, that there are really good, passionate, and engaged people that care and want to keep doing this good work. And we're here to do it.
Yeah, I've met your team, and I'm telling you, you do have a very passionate, caring team that wants this to work. And let's just hope and pray, and also let's just really hope and also put our money where our mouth is and make it work.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. Hedi Jalon, the Executive Director of the California Fire Safe Council, a statewide organization to help prevent wildfire in California. Hedi, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet.
Murphy Austin Adams Schoenfeld LLP, focusing on business law and commercial litigation, is proud to support Rob on the Road, Region Rising. More information available at murphyaustin.com.